Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Stanley number FBB169NRP-5-26D. This is a full surface hinge is what this is. I actually have one taken out. Here's what it looks like. So first of all, what kind of gives it away that it's an unusual hinge is the fact that that barrel is offset from what you would normally see. But really what tells us that it's a full surface hinge is the way that the leaves of the hinge are bent. And we're going to talk about that more in a moment. And take note that those leaves are not level, they're not flush. And that's correct. That's the way that that would really need to be. But we'll talk about that. So FBB169, we will discuss or dissect the part number. First, let's talk about its basic dimensional properties. This is a 5-inch hinge, and that refers to the height of the leaf. Okay, height of the leaf. Going across the hinge, maybe from the back, the width of the door leaf to the center of the barrel is about 2 7/8, and then what would be the frame leaf looks like that's about 1 7/16 inches perhaps. And overall, looks like it's about 4 7/16 of an inch. We'll talk about why that's the case. Those leaves aren't flat in a moment. Let's just wrap up some additional dimensional properties. The thickness of the leaf is 0.183. It nominally should be 0.190. Yeah, 0.183. That's what the leaf thickness is. They're not light. It's just a 5-inch hinge, but it's a 5-inch heavyweight. They weigh 1.73 pounds. So where are you going to use this pretty epic hinge? Let's talk about that right now. So where would you use this hinge? Well, first of all, it's a full surface hinge, and where people are going to end up using full surface hinges are generally in applications where you're dealing with unusual door construction or unusual circumstances. And really what I mean is if you have a typical hollow metal door and frame, you're probably not going to use this to replace hinges that you already have or have failed. You'll probably choose to go with some other method if you have a failed hinge location. The point I'm trying to make is if you're going to go from a full mortise hinge and you're forced to do something else because of a failed hinge plate or a damaged door or frame, going to full surface is a good option. It's probably that you're not going to go with full surface like this when you could possibly use an aluminum continuous geared hinge. That would probably be a better option. And when people look at these hinges, I generally hear from them that they've got something unusual happening. They've got a iron welded gate, and they have an unusual, jam or post or some sort of steel structure condition is where these types of hinges I see more and more. However, having said that, it's very likely that you're going to get into a scenario where you have a condition by which this hinge could possibly be the only hinge that works elegantly, and where the factory tells us is that you're going to have, in the cut sheet, which I'll show you, they refer to if you have a mineral core door, a fire rated door, and it's a hospital, let's say, or a school, and over the years of use and abuse, there's nothing solid in the edge of the door really for screws to attach to. And while that door should be replaced outright because you're no longer, you no longer have the integrity of the door because you've not repaired it, what some people will definitely do is use a surface mounted hinge, because this hinge is going to include all the fasteners that you need. Well, for over here, it's going to be 1224 flathead machine screws like you would see typical for a mortise hinge. And they're here, just 1224 flat undercut head with self-tapping, with a thread cutting tip to them, or thread forming. Okay, right here with thread forming, with a thread forming feature to the tip of it. But also what's in here are the sex bolts or through bolts. You've got the male end here, you've got the female ends here. There's 3 of them. So 4 of those screws, and then, pardon me, are there 3 or 4? If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Ah, there are enough. Okay, they put, so in this box of 3 hinges, they do have an adequate quantity. They have, I see what they did, forgive me, they have 3 in each package. So for 3 hinges, we need a total of 12 each, and yes, they have hit that requirement of 12 each. That's what they've done. Okay, so in an application where you have a fire-rated door and, you know, a full mortise hinge is just not going to work anymore, you might consider a full surface hinge. Now, obviously, you might consider a half surface hinge if the frame is still good, because the bend on that leaf is such that the jam leaf, then you detach it from this side, obviously, will allow you to stay inside of the mortise in the jam itself. Okay, so nothing to really worry about there. But if you need to wrap to the face of the door because the edge of the door is damaged, yeah, this is the way to go. Now, years and years and years ago, before Roton was owned by Hager, and before Roton hinges were a thing, a lot of people just were stuck on, those are ugly, you know, and Roton was selling them lifetime guarantee of the building. You know, the warranty on this hinge is the same as the warranty on your building. And sure enough, you know, when it went from the 780 210, Stanley makes continuous hinges. Stanley wasn't bringing these to market, you know, in the late 80s or early 90s, whenever it was. People got over that it's ugly when they would come in and say, yeah, I need a new door. What, you know, what can you do? My top hinge is no good anymore. What do you got for me? Well, how about a continuous hinge? What's that? Well, you know what a piano hinge is? Yes, of course. Well, it's kind of like that. You know, full surface, and people didn't love those. But when they came out with mortise and other applications, and now today the ecosystem of continuous hinges is quite developed, those hinges are, I prefer pivots every time that I can. I think they're more elegant, but aluminum continuous geared hinges are a no-brainer. And the reason that they are is, well, first of all, and this is not a video on those hinges, but it can kind of look better than 3 of these weird full surface or half mortise hinges, or half surface hinges, I should say. Installation time is not that big of a deal. The first time I ever installed a continuous hinge, it took me 50 minutes. And I'd never done it before. Get the door shimmed in place, take that hinge, mark all your holes, drill 30-some holes, attach, you're in good shape. But there will be applications where you just need to replace one hinge, and it could be that a full surface hinge will do it. Now this is, because this will be mounted always on the pull side of the door, assuming that it is an exterior door that swings out, you're going to see these with NRP. So that is a set screw that's in there, that's tightened down. That's going to all but prevent me. And one interesting thing that Stanley does is on certain hinges, they include this pin removal tool where you can whack that and drive the pin out. You will first want to loosen that, otherwise you're going to damage this tool beyond use, because the pin really won't come out. So loosen that out. You can start to tap that pin out. Why would you do that? Well, you might want to get the leaves separated from each other so that you can actually hang the door and then tap the pins down. You know, with a full surface hinge like this, I'm always tempted to get it put in place, get it shimmed up from the bottom, get it shimmed from either side. I know that my reveal of the door, the distance, or my inset, forgive me, my inset from the face of the frame to the face of the door is proper, and that's exactly why these leaves are not flat with each other, okay? Because the door is actually inset into the frame ever so slightly. And that's why this leaf, the frame leaf, needs to ride up a little bit higher, because the door and frame are not flush like you'll see in a lot of aluminum. So they're really thinking hollow metal frames. They're really thinking wood, steel, whatever door you have hanging in there. Maybe fiberglass would be a good option for that as well. This is in the 26D finish, satin chrome. This is definitely made of steel. That FBB, so F F is their part number for hinges, I guess. BB means ball bearing. When you have a heavyweight hinge like this, 190 thousandths on a 5-inch hinge, you'll have 4 bearing packets. The 169, all that conspires to mean heavyweight steel base full surface. So it's heavyweight, it's steel, and it's full surface. Okay. This will be available in different finishes. We have them probably in prime coat and satin chrome, but technically in that we don't have it really currently in any other finish. You know, it's a full surface hinge. People are really not calling for satin bronze on these, although it's possible. So if you have need for oil rubbed or satin brass or black, that's not uncommon. Black actually is a good finish to have in here. Reach out to us. Stanley can most certainly help. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at all of our supporting information. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, here's the hinge that we are looking at. Speaking of looking at, let's take a look at some photographs that we have here. Might be a little bit easier to do that. Photos. Here is the label on the box. Okay. And we also have the hinge itself, kind of showing a cross section, I suppose. The bottom button, well, this tip has a hole in it. The other side does not, as seen here. You know, if you're gonna, this hinge right here would be arranged for a left-hand reverse. If you're gonna flip that over, I would definitely remove that button tip and move it to the other side, because you don't want rain going in there. You don't want a hole. You want the top of the hinge to look like this. And this is definitely a left-hand reverse open to 90 degree. That's what that looks like. Just a close-up of the finish. The Stanley logo. We have some more here we can look at. The barrel assembly itself. The back side of the hinge, showing the set screw for the NRP feature. And the FBB, that actually does say well, FBB169 is what that says. Let me make sure. Yeah, definitely. That's stamped FBB169. That's a nice thing that Stanley does. Another company does it as well, maybe more than one. Gives you a tip-off as to whose hinge you have. A little close-up view of that. Your accessories, your pin removal tool. This is just a piece of perforated cardboard. Those are meant to act as shims should you need that at all. Your fastener package, and then a close-up of the fastener package. Extended description information down below. Heavyweight, high-frequency mineral core or wood doors with edge rails that won't hold screws, hung on channel iron frames. Probably just hollow metal frames, or an unusual situation. NRP, non-removable pin, 190 thousandths, which is heavyweight. It is steel base, it is 5-knuckle. 4 Stanley permanently lubricated non-detachable ball bearings. It's a stainless steel pin on these. Reversible flush tips and pin, we talked about that. Consider using a backplate with these hinges. What they're saying is this. When you're going to through bolt this hinge through a wood door, you're going to, on the push side of the door, you're going to see only the grommet end or the female end of those screws. You might need to consider, depending on the composition of the door, a backplate. And that backplate would be right on the back side of the door. It's just a piece of steel with holes in it right here, so that when you run those screws through it and you tighten them down, you don't crush the head of the screws into the door and collapse everything. That's why you might want the backplate. I don't know that Stanley makes backplates. Oh, they do. They have a BP-1. Aha. And they do make them for 5-inch. So BP-1 would be your part number. Good to know. BP-1. I'm going to just check and see if we have those in our site. Yeah, we don't. We will by the time you're seeing this video, however. Packed with machine screws and grommet nuts for 1 3/4 thick doors. If you have a door that's other than 1 3/4, you're going to need a longer 1/4-20 flathead bolt. Stove bolt is what I'd call this. The one that's in here is 2-inch long, so adjust accordingly. There's a template here. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, that's a good technical drawing. This is probably, yeah, this is 15 years old at this point, and this drawing is probably the same as what it looked like in 1950. Shows you the location of all the screw holes. If you're not sure if this is the right hinge, regarding the location of those holes, well, here's a document that will allow you to know that absolutely. Okay. Okay. They do give columns of their other hinge models that this applies to. Different knuckle configurations. 3-knuckle, obviously 5-knuckle. They're going to have steel and non-ferrous base hinges, whether it be stainless or brass or bronze. And just different hinge types is the bottom line. We're dealing with an FBB169. Its stainless counterpart is FBB109. That's a bit unusual. I'm sure it's correct. But it gives you the C, D, and E dimensions should you want to know those. D and C and E, and they're all listed right here. Good. Now there is a link below this video as seen here to the manufacturer's page. From here you can pull up not only all of the Stanley products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation as seen here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. The one I like to use is the one here, the 2010 catalog. It's an older book, but I just don't like the new one, is the bottom line. And let's take a look at that catalog. So as we go through it, the reason I like this old catalog is, well, I'm familiar with it. I don't think this format changed from the early 90s when I started looking at it. A little history about Stanley, but they get right into an encyclopedic approach to what are hinges. General hinge information, full mortise, half surface, full surface. You can immediately start to see, okay, if you're going to be involved in hinges, whether you're an owner, an architect, an engineer, a designer, a distributor, an installer, a specifier, the poor guy who's been tasked, with trying to find where they went to, it's helpful to know what you're looking at. And this catalog's, Stanley isn't the only one that has a good encyclopedic catalog, but theirs is the standard, in my opinion. Formulation to determine the width of a hinge is here, fastener types, handing, finish descriptions, etc. Okay. So, and just to further that, you might end up seeing things in here that you say to yourself, I didn't know they made that. Did you know? Would you think that they ever made half surface swing clear hinges? Well, it's right here. That's a half. It says it right here. Swing clear half surface. Okay, you do see those. You know where I see those is in the half doors in grocery stores where they return the carts. They push the carts through the exterior wall. They've got swing clear hinges on there, and they're either full surface or they're half surface hinges. So anchor hinges are here. You may never see those often. In 30 years, it took me to my 30th year before I really sold any of these. I may have sold some anchor hinges, in 1993, but it took till 2021 before I sold any more. Very unusual. More details about hinges. You get the point. Like I said earlier, if you deal with these, take a look at this catalog. You might really like what you're looking at. Now, below this video also is a cut sheet of our FBB169, and here it is. Okay. FBB169 made of steel. Whatever finishes you like, almost whatever. And yeah, it is an FBB109 if you have a non-ferrous base material, brass, bronze, or stainless. These are all the details that we went over earlier. Okay. This shows you the sizes that these are available in. 4.5, 5, and 6. This doesn't show up in a load rating anywhere at all, but I would consider the same type of weight range that you would see on probably a standard weight hinge when using these hinges. You know, if you're dealing with 125-pound doors, 4.5, you know, that kind of thing. The point is if you're going to try to hang a 400-pound door with full surface hinges, I think you're going to need to consider a different hanging method, because there's not a chart that we can go to and say, yeah, this full surface hinge was tested at, you know, or was load rated. Now, they do have a weight chart in here, but I don't think full surface is there at all. Yeah, they don't. They don't have full surface here. So you're going to have to use your experience and common sense as a guide for that, because, you know, it's technically not load rated. It's not listed as a weight range directly. They're telling you what it's used for, mineral corridors, but you know, those aren't going to exceed ever 200 pounds. So be mindful what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with something unusual, maybe a little bit heavier, you know, you're going to want to consider maybe something heavier, or again, an alternative means of hanging it. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, good quality hinge, as you see here from Stanley. I'm a fan of their products, and I say that in every video, and it's not because I'm a Stanley hinge salesman. It's because it's the hinge that I would use. Most certainly their fit and finish is always very good. The hinge leaves just move nicely right out of the box. Some hinge manufacturers, you gotta work it in, and you tell them, why is it, you say to the manufacturer's rep, why is it like that? Well, you gotta get it under some weight for that hinge leaf to move. Sure, you don't have to do with Stanley's. Is what I say to that. Their hinges are made in Asia, somewhere in China, and when they come in, if it's a special order, it's going to ship right from China to us or to you. If it's not in stock, there's going to be a lead time, 5-6 weeks. Absolutely nothing we can do about it. It's made on the other side of the planet from scratch for you at that time. Plan ahead. I would be planning ahead. I would prefer to use their hinges. In a world where hinges aren't really much different than they were decades and decades ago, to me it's the backbone of the door, and Stanley makes a really great product. I have seen or been contacted countless times about people that have turned that hinge over and given me a FBB199 part number. And I say, well, how old is that opening? Well, the building was built in 1930. And they're just replacing the hinges 80 years later. It's not unusual to hear that at all. Friends of ours, their home was built in 1926 maybe, and those Stanley hinges aren't original, but they're CB199 612 finish. And I know that those hinges are several decades old for sure, because we know the last time there was a remodel was sometime mid-20th century. Those hinges look great, and my friend said, should I replace those? I looked at us and said, are you nuts? First, there's nothing wrong with them. Second, do you know how much money those cost? You're going to leave those right there, because he changed the color from bronze to something else, and he elected to keep them because he really didn't care too much about the finish. And good for him, because they just looked and operated perfectly. A CB hinge, a concealed bearing hinge, so a nice clean barrel. But the important part is there was no wear pattern around the barrels. You use other hinges and you'll notice that you'll have a wear pattern, but that CB hinge was really just working like the day it went in. And it's a residential application, but not a lot of volume, but nonetheless, still decades of use. If you have any questions on the FBB169 5-26D or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.